Good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks to the HCTA team, thanks to the district team for being here again tonight. I thought we'd start off by introducing ourselves for the benefit of anyone who may be watching for the first time. Rachel.
Coming in hot.
I
All
figured
right.
I'd do to you.
Rachel Vassalero, Challenger K8.
Dana Blazek, JD Floyd.
Lisa Masario, HCTA President.
Kim Hudson, FEA Executive Director.
Patricia Greenwood, Central High School.
Casey Tobias, Suncoast.
Jim Enzes, Occupational Therapy, ESC.
Caroline Mogler, Staff Counsel for the Hernando County School District.
Joyce McIntyre, CFO.
Alexis Brown, Director of Human Resources.
Matthew Goldrick, Director of Labor Relations and Professional Standards.
Steve Cronali, Executive Director, Support Operations.
And Ed LaRose, Principal, Wekiwachi High School.
So we're here today because we agreed to meet today as part of our last round of negotiations. And HCTA sent us some questions on enrollment, finances, insurance, and ESSER funds and allocations. So we thought we'd pick one of those subjects and then have a discussion about each one to try to answer some of those questions, and then we could have follow-ups, obviously. So I'll start, if that's okay, with insurance, because I wanted to advertise for the benefit of all our employees that on April 29th at 3 o'clock, we are going to have that insurance committee meeting. And so FLET will be here to meet with the insurance committee. FLET, again, stands for Florida. I don't remember what it stands for, but it's a health trust that's for all the school districts in Florida. Florida Educational Health Trust, that's what it is. And so they're coming because the board did in January sign a participation agreement for us to explore moving to being self-insured and having FLET support us in that process. So what's going to be presented to the insurance committee on April 9th is a better understanding of FLET and where it's going. And I'm also going to outline that to the board, we're going to be presenting a fully insured quote from Blue Cross Blue Shield and a self-insured quote from Blue Cross Blue Shield, as well as what that will look like with fleet. One of the questions that was asked was, what startup money do we need for self-insurance? And the good thing is it's not a lot. And the reason it's not a lot is because claims are paid in arrears. So if we started this in January 27, we would be able to build from the premiums that we collect from our employees the money we need to pay out in claims. We do have some health insurance money set aside that has come to us through donations from Blue Cross Blue Shield, wellness. We've got MLR and profit sharing from previous years is still in existence and hasn't all been spent. So some of that, when we go through this year and plan for 27, we may decide we're going to use this much of that to set aside just to have a little bit of a buffer in addition to what premiums we collect. But it's not as significant as I think when we talked about self-insuring 4 years ago, it seemed like a much more significant number we needed to have, and that's not the case. The money that we use from reserves to support health insurance this year for the increase is more than the wellness we get each year. The wellness we get each year is only about $150,000. So we actually use more than that. So it was fortunate that we had saved money so that that made this year possible.
When you say wellness dollars plus reserve, are you talking about fund balance reserve or specifically insurance dollars?
Only insurance dollars. So again, the ways we get insurance dollars and the things that are set aside just for health insurance would be donations, would be wellness, which are kind of the same thing in a way, but not. And then there's something called MLR. I think MLR is from the HMO, and then profit share is from the PPO. And then I think that's it. I didn't hear the question, I'm sorry. It is. It, one reason to discuss it now is that that probably impacted our premiums from Blue Cross Blue Shield. So there's probably some statistical probability of claims based on when you start that. And so it may be something we have to consider as we build our plan.
Okay, I'm
mean-
just going to repeat the question then. The question was about the waiting period for health insurance benefits to begin. And
For an employee.
New employees, what he was asking is
Yep.
if it's a period of 30 days when they start, and
It's actually
it's
60
been
right
60
now.
days. Yeah.
Yes. I think one thing that is being thought about by all of us involved in it, as well as I think probably recommended by Fleet, is that for the benefit of our employees, we'll probably change, it'll all be part of the discussion with the insurance committee and ultimately a board decision. But one of the things we're going to try to do for our employees is, one of the reasons we'll most likely end up with Blue Cross Blue Shield or Florida Blue as our ASO is that it will be the less disruption to our employees.
Meaning like keeping the same doctors
Right,
and
the
that
same
kind of
doctors
thing.
would still be in the network and available. And even, we'll be making that decision on twofold, because it'll be just the doctors, as well as we may have some benefit from going to a different, one of the benefits of being self-insured, we can go to a different provider for the prescriptions, but that could cause disruption. So we'll have to really explore that carefully. And what we'll do is we'll do our best to get, like, I won't go into all these details because this is more the insurance committee. We can talk about this on April 29th.
Okay. Can you just clarify, you used an acronym, ASO. What does that stand for?
That stands for who is your third-party claims provider. So they would be the people that would provide the network of doctors. It'd be like a rental. And as well as they'd be the ones processing claims. So that one of the benefits of having an ASO is they make all the claims decisions rather than any of us up here making claims decisions about our friends and family who work for us in the district.
So I guess the only other question remaining in that category is, do those funds replenish themselves year over year? We're talking about, I mean, I have somewhat of an understanding of the MLR and profit sharing that usually does result in.
All those funds were provided to us because we were fully insured.
Got it.
So that will be something we'll have to think about as we build the rates for our employees,
Okay.
how to build in that.
So those are specific funds that end up as part of the agreement with a fully insured model with Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Correct.
So moving in a different direction may mean that those specific wellness dollars, MLR, whether or not the decision to build that into the insurance model as a self-insured plan is something that would be discussed by insurance committee.
Correct.
Okay.
I can start with enrollments when we look at in terms of students and seats. Because I think when we talk about enrollments, we could look at it from a bunch of different perspectives. So if I pull Survey 3 from the 24-25 school year and compare it to our 26-27 projections, it's a total downward trend of 352 students. If I look at just 25-26 to 26-27 projections, so 25-26 is what we would have allocated at. And right now, we are still talking about projections till we get to 10-day count. It's a net negative of 151. So it's a downward trend. But with the growth that we have seen, it's kind of helped us, if that makes any sense. But if you looked at our overall enrollment for the entire district, and it includes every category, it could look like an increase. But we stick to K through 12 butts and seats, because that's what drives our actual allocations.
Can you just repeat the years that you started off with? Because
Okay. So survey 3 for the 24-25 school year. To projections for the 26-27 school year is a total of negative 352. And then just looking at last year's projections to 26-27 projections, that's a negative 151.
And the reason that it looks like that is because the numbers could look like they're increasing, but those are just pass-through numbers, right? Because that money's really going somewhere else. Okay.
so the comparison you made was survey 3 of 24-25 last year. Do we not have survey 3 of this year?
I can give you the exact numbers. So survey 3 of 25-26, we were sitting at 22,367. That's total enrollment K through 12 in brick and mortar. And so if you compare that to survey 3 of 24-25, that was 22,688. And projections for 26-27 is 22,336.
Is that the district's projection or the state's projection?
That's the district's projection. Looking at roll-up, we don't have definite numbers. We still have, so if you look at individual schools, that number will continue to change as we allow parents to make school choice and kind of moving the coconut under the shell. I don't know what the saying is, but that peanut under the coconut shell. So there will be some movement there. And we obviously hope that maybe we will have some new enrollment, but that's where we sit right now is the 22,336.
I know people can enroll their kids on all the way, obviously, forever, but hopefully kindergarten roundup or whatever we're calling it this year, May 6th. Are we hoping?
For that.
What happened? You projected?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
I get what you're saying. And that's what principals are
I'm
usually like, but wait,
a bunch of kindergartners roll in, you know,
right.
like.
And we obviously hope that that continues to happen.
Right.
But typically what we do is we look over a year-over-year ratio of what our enrollment was and what first grade remained by the end of that school year and kind of do like a little bit of it's like throwing spaghetti at a wall until you get to 10-day count. But our numbers have been pretty close over the past few years, and we've tried to be really tight because we obviously want to keep as many allocations as we can. So
The district goes through its own projection process, but that's different from the state's projections, which were funded on. So what was the gap? What was the difference between what the state projected and funded us on and what?
in the same time period as like that 352 range, they were looking at somewhere, I think it was around 288. So we're not that far off in the grand scheme of things, and we will obviously continue to watch those numbers. Now, in terms of FTE and weights, that's a whole different category because to me, those aren't even real numbers. Like, it's not a one-for-one. It's not a student for a student, so I'm sorry.
That's the numbers I go off of, though. Because, I mean, that's what I have to balance, too, to the FEFP calcs. So, again, we're in two different sides of things. So, like, when you and I met, we went over FTE and those things. I look at the information that's submitted to DOE from the district, which counts, you know, whatever we have selected for family empowerment, who's ever enrolled in family empowerment, our charter schools, PACE, DJJ, workforce, all of those together. So I take that total number and I balance to what we submit to DOE versus what comes in and reflects the revenue in our calcs as they come in. So in October, we had the projection. Now, Alexis's projection doesn't include these others. So again, I'm looking at, the FTE piece of it versus the actual student, themselves. Our number came in at 28,646.25. That is the weighted FTE number. And then if you were to look, I know one of the questions you had mentioned was, based on the conference reports, the second calc to, whatever, how they changed. So on the conference calc, we started at 28,298. That stayed pretty consistent. And then on our third calc that we got in, it came in at 28,646.25. And that was an increase of 347.55 weighted FTE. So again, it appears that our numbers are growing, but the numbers are growing in the areas probably that we don't want them to be growing because, of course, family empowerment went up again. And I know we were trying to project, okay, well, maybe if it's this, it could be that. But I had mentioned that we're not sure what the state would give us for the offsetting discretionary because there hasn't been really any consistency. So it basically, there was a $2 million difference when you were to go and you were to add the increase in family empowerment, which there was, less what the state did allow. There was like a $614,000 difference from what we said they originally gave us, that we weren't sure if they were going to give us more or less. They gave us about $614,000 more. So the net impact of it was 2.1. So that was the callback that you were referring to in your next question. You asked
Right,
about.
so that was the impact of basically the family empowerment scholarships over and, so did the state provide funds to mitigate
That was
the
that-
effects?
So it was really, the net impact of it was, it went from 29 million to 32 million. And then the state did that difference for that, the discretionary offsetting, and that's where, the difference on what we had from the prior calc to the current calc was 2.1 difference. So we were short 2.1 difference from that.
Okay, so the estimate, I'm just trying to restate the estimate was that it would be an impact of 29 million and it ended up being an impact of 32?
Yes. But the net of it, with that supplement that the state gave, that state discretionary, was, 2.1 from what we had included in our budget before. So we're short 2.1 million, so we had to look for that.
And one thing that we looked at was, I'll just give you, 21-22, we had 1,080 in family empowerment. In 25-26, it was up to 3,584. So it's grown 350% in
It's
4 years.
8584.25.
Can you repeat that again?
Sure. In 21-22, family empowerment was around 1,080, which I assume means bodies, right?
No, that's FTE. That's FTE.
Okay. And then
Not bodies,
Not bodies,
FTE.
FTE.
in 25-26, it went up to 3,584. So that's a 350% growth over 4 years.
Just as an education piece for everybody watching, I think it's important to talk about how the parameters changed for the family empowerment scholarships as well. Because in 2021-22, family empowerment scholarships were offered for what kinds of reasons? Wasn't that specifically because a student requested or a family requested because of a bullying situation, a difficulty?
Special
Right.
needs too.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
opened up basically, like, lack of a better term, like the marketplace. So you could decide to elect for a family empowerment scholarship. Those funds are placed in like an intermediate, like bank account. And as the family purchases things like curriculum or whatever they need for that year, it's reimbursed out of that account. It's not a perfect model because if a family, say, happens to re-enroll their student after that account has been opened and those funds have been transferred, depending on the timing, we may not be eligible for any of it. But not only that, if the family doesn't necessarily know how to go into that account and disassociate that student with that account, there's at the least a lag of following the funding, which I do believe the state is working on some kind of mechanism to tighten that up, because it definitely puts districts at a deficit if you have a student who misses that FTE count, say for survey 2, but then comes back to school and now we've missed half a year's worth of funding for that student. So that definitely makes budgeting difficult, because we're still obviously required to provide whatever services that student may need without necessarily ever getting the funding back.
But I think one thing, that's the current model, and it's open to pretty much everybody. Whereas before, you had to have special circumstances to qualify.
Correct. And often now, it is also capturing students who have never attended our schools.
That's true.
And their families have had the ability to send them to a different setting, education, or homeschool them.
On their own.
On their own, and it wasn't coming out of the district funding. So that could be true of people who recently moved to Hernando County, never enrolled their students here, but know that the family empowerment scholarships exist and know that they have a possibility of taking those funds to send to private school. But I think the other thing that, the general public probably needs to be a little more aware of is also the idea that there are students who, in any of their educational history have never attended our schools. Their parents have always chosen a different model for their child, and they could afford it. But now those family empowerment scholarships are being used to provide the education for students who their family could afford to send them and had always chosen a different type of setting for their child. And I think, that's the part that I think is very difficult for our employees to understand, as far as coming up against this budget crunch situation. I think, Joyce, you shared before that the initial impact of family empowerment scholarships was something like 24 million that we experienced last school year. And, it created a difficult situation as for projection. It created a difficult situation with our fund balance. There were a lot of impacts of that, but mostly because, a lot of those students we didn't know we needed to count, or we didn't have a mechanism to be able to count them, because they didn't leave us. They didn't leave our schools to take the money somewhere else. They just said, oh wait, we live here too. And we've always gone to such and such private school or this and that church school or whatever. We've always gone somewhere else, but now we're going to claim some of the funding. So I think that's a huge educational point, because you can count kids who leave our schools, right? You're able to say, okay, this family came in and withdrew and this student is now doing something different. It is very difficult to account for kids we don't know about. So I just think, that part specifically, I wanted to make sure we could discuss as a general education thing for people out in the community as well, to hear how those impacts of the family empowerment scholarships are kind of starving off resources, which our public schools are still educating the majority of students. Probably between 70 and 80% of Hernando County students are here with us in our schools.
I wanted to point something else out too. I was just looking at, for instance, our base student allocation is $5,372.60 per student, right? But when you were to take the number of students that are in family empowerment by the amount of money that the state has reduced our funding by, it calculates to about $9,100 a student. So that's without that state, like that supplement that they're giving. I mean, it does work out to be less after you take that. But initially, if the state weren't to supplement with that additional $5 million or so, I mean, that's a lot. I mean, how they come up with that, I mean, we don't know if they're putting additional weight factors on there or if it's something else. We just don't know. So again, like we had spoke earlier or last year, when I planned the budget, I doubled the amount for family empowerment, not even thinking that was, I just wanted to be more conservative, not thinking for a million years that it would be more than what I put in for that. So I'm going to go into this budget year again with trying to anticipate what that number could be. But again, it's a number that's uncertain. I don't have all the data to support, I only have what we have captured in our system, and our best guess. And your best guess is going to be based on trend, So ideally, I'm going to need to increase the amount. But if for some miraculous reason, it comes back better, I mean, I'm just putting it out there. You just don't know what you don't know, but I have to still, account for it, because we base allocations, everything based on that. So I'm just putting it out there.
Joyce, when you mentioned that 9,100, what do we get per student?
53, I think it's 5362.
I just want to make sure that was clear.
That's the base without any weights.
Yeah.
Just no additional services for that student. So let me just pull it up. 5372.60. I read it right without my glasses. Yeah, 5372.60.
So why is the base so much? I mean, I know we didn't set the base for the family empowerment scholarships, but why is the base so much higher for family empowerment scholarships? Are we assuming every family that takes family empowerment has a student that is exceptional or receives more funding? Because base is,
Base. Right. And I think even when you came by, I mean, that's not the same number. If you take the number on what the states by our total FTE to come up with what that is, that number hasn't been the same. So I don't know what that formula
And
is.
I'm wondering if maybe some of that is the in-between, the funds that are sitting in that marketplace, like that haven't been reappropriated, because I do think that the state does look at that year over year, but it's always in arrears. It's always after our money has been distributed. So, I mean, maybe, I don't know.
I mean, it's just, I have no idea. I can't really answer to that, but it's not a consistent number is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of your questions also was about fund balance. And at this point, we are working on Budget Amendment 3 right now. And Budget Amendment 3 will show the impact of our third FEFP calc, where you'll see that difference in there. And you're not going to see the fluctuation for raises, but it's not finished yet. So as of right now, our fund balance was as it stands for our last budget amendment. I can't really give you a true projection. I probably could get a closer estimate, more towards once raises and bonuses and everything's been, but you still have supplements that get paid out and stuff like that. So that number is going to be changing. I don't want to give you a concrete number right now because we're still posting stuff. So that's why you haven't seen that third quarter, January through March, where we're still actually posting invoices for Kelly services at this point. Come May, that'll give you the true up for the revenue number and the impact as far as that fluctuation. And then the next budget amendment will reflect with raises, because that'll be in that other quarter. So I was just trying to find my last page.
can you just, what was it for our budget amendment 2? That's, okay.
Just trying to put my hands on it. The total fund balance is $16,928,607, but the unassigned piece of that is $13,191,289, which is 5.57% of unassigned. The other numbers that make up that 16 million is our 1.3 in inventory, and then the health insurance profit sharing that Mr. Goldrick had spoke about earlier, which of that 2.4 health insurance, once the year and the final payouts for all contracts is when I'll reduce that amount for what was voted on, that the board would pick up the difference. So that number will decline as well.
And the 2.1 million callback that you talked about is also going to impact this, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so just make sure I got, the assigned number is 16,928,607. That was the
Assigned and
first-
unassigned combined.
That's assigned and unassigned combined.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then that portion of unassigned within that is 13,191,289.
Yes.
Okay.
If I could circle back to the student funding quick, because I think there's, being in the ESE world, I know that there is some confusion for the average students. You've got the categorical allocations that are added to that base funding, which makes every student roughly between 8,900 to 9,400. The only students who are actually weighted higher than that, because like basic education is about 1.1. ESOL is slightly higher. It is your level 4 and level 5 ESE students that are anywhere from, I believe it's 3.6 for level 4s up to 6.0 students for your level 5s. That's where those big amounts come in for the weighted funding. But for most other funding, it's just the categoricals that are added. So there's that general amount that comes to that roughly $9,000, which is like the ESE guaranteed allocation separate, student transportation, safe schools, mental health, all of those pieces that are added in there. I know I looked at it enough times, but the only areas that are really weighted higher are those higher ESE students. Most of them are right about anywhere from 0.9 to 1.2.
I think our CTE also carries a little bit more weight on there as well. I think that's the only other one that, yeah. Yeah. Do you have any other questions before I move on to another one?
I think the reason why I included the question, about the difference in the fund balance last year compared to this year, I know that we had a phone conversation outlining some of those factors, but it is something that I think employees are concerned about,
Sure.
So just some general comments on, we talked about how family empowerment scholarships might have impacted that, but maybe some other,
I can address it.
okay.
So the reason I'm saying I could readily address that for you is one of the things that was brought up from our audit exit conference as far as the depletion of the fund balance. As like I said, in an analytical review, it's comparisons as far as what has changed from one year to the next, and so it was around 13.3 was what was exceeding like revenues and expenditures. So we depleted that by 13 million from last year. 2.1 of that was for the ESSER positions that were moved over to general fund. There was an FRS increase of 1.4.
And this is million, right?
Mhm.
I just wanted to make sure
I'm
we're
sorry.
clarifying and we're not saying
Yes,
percent,
I-
right? 1.4 million.
I'll be clear. There was the ELA textbook adoption. The amount that went over the original appropriation for that was 1.7 million. There was additional duty for summer programs that were previously paid for out of ESSER funds that was $718,990. And then raises, all units excluding federal programs, food service, and TSIA was $7.3 million. Do you have any questions on that?
I think the only question is the amount that the raises impacted the fund balance, because our understanding is we don't usually budget in that way, in a way that raises would be coming from something that is the the fund balance number, like the savings account number. So the fact that it impacted the fund balance to that level, I mean, is that an anomaly just last year?
No, our fund balance has been depleting for the past couple of years, actually. We just haven't felt it as much because of those ESSER funds, coming in like that. But
And before that, it was growth.
Yes, and right. But I mean, just the past couple of years, you can see where it's just a matter of, raises they haven't ever been budgeted for in the past. And it's just, so you go into your budget cycle with revenues and appropriations, pretty much in balance with each other. And then if there's not a line item already for for raises, then that's going to come from that savings accounts because you need to balance it back out. So it's been the past couple of years.
And I think that that's what it has been likened to in most districts, because like you said, before ESSER, there was a period of, we were on an incline, so there was growth. So that makes sense that that's where those dollars would come from. Then when ESSER came, its dollars were used for ESSER, but that has since been depleted. So even in putting those ESSER-funded positions now being reallocated, it's not increasing, it's getting us closer back to zero, if that makes any sense, because we were behind the 8 ball by putting those.
So I know one of the things we had on here was the ELA adoption, and I'm sure most of you have heard.
I said that wrong again.
Oh, no, you're fine. No, you're I'm pretty sure I got this answered the other day, but I just want to make sure it's going to be appropriate for all grade levels. As you know, some of the stuff is being reprinted, for those who haven't heard, because it now needs to say Golf of America. That's not coming at a cost to us, is it? Does anyone know? If not, just a question to maybe be asked. I know some of it we're just throwing stickers on, but some of it has to be fully reprinted. So most of our student stuff is consumable, so that's probably not going to cost. But I've also heard we're turning in teacher manuals that now need to be fully reprinted. So just putting that on the radar. If that's, I'm pretty sure I was told, if I understood Tiffany the other day, that that's not coming at a cost to us. But I was only asking about my curriculum at that time, just because we were at curriculum maps. So just something to keep an eye on. So I don't think that's going to cost us anything, but the new House bill put that in place.
I just wanted to add on there too. I mean, like Alexis just said, the ESSER positions, that again, that helped eat up part of that fund balance. So taking that away is just trying to bring things back. But if you were to still look at last year's budget, when you go and you'll see, if our revenue numbers don't change, and our appropriations all stay the same, we can't operate that way because we have nothing to offset. We've already committed to the growth for TSIA. If we have, we have to account for STEP. We got to account for these other things that I know I'm receiving notices for fuel like fuel prices are going up and things. So we need to do something, because we do not have the fund balance for an emergency of anything at this point. So I just want to, I know it's nothing new. We've had this conversation, you and I, multiple times, but now it's really where, it's that time where we have to do something to make changes. And it's awful that this is happening. I hope there will be a cap at some point for family empowerment, that we don't have to continue to be in this position, but that's really hurt us tremendously.
if that kind of ends the discussion, we brought some proposals for us to look at.
I think the only other thing I wanted to just make sure is understood is, I hear a lot of concern and anxiety about specifically the MTSS coordinator positions, because generally for elementary teachers, I mean, you're probably the better person to speak about this. There's a lot of angst about it because of the amount of documentation, meetings, and things that those positions accomplish for teachers in the elementary level. So we understand that those positions were grant funded, and the grant funding, so we understand the need for the pivot. It's just that our interest in all of that is to make sure that that work isn't being dumped back on teachers, because that would prompt us to request, to bargain the impact of that work being reverted back to people in our unit if those positions are eliminated. Right now, what I hear from most sites, the reason we haven't taken that step is because I do hear from most sites that principals are working towards ensuring that that work is going to be accomplished by a non-classroom role, so that the support for the MTSS process will continue. I know I have people who work at elementary level, they could probably speak to it a little bit more.
So we just wrapped up allocation meetings last week, and we're still finalizing staff sheets. I'm going to work on getting you a total allocation. It will probably be closer to the end of next week because I want to go through departments and just make sure we have an accurate number. I will say that administrators have worked really hard to ensure that that work is delegated appropriately and does not fall back. So I have not heard anything from anyone yet. If we get to that point, obviously we can definitely talk about that. But so far, I think that everyone has really put their heads together to not only preserve the people, the work, and the allocations. And I think it's been a lot of collaboration, but it's worked out really well so far. So that's what I can tell you.
So the additional allocations, is that what you're saying you're going to get back to me on, that last question on here?
So and I just want to clarify exactly. So we're talking total allocations for instructional bargaining unit. Yes. So I will definitely need about a week to get through that. We only did schools, so I also want to be able to get with all the departments and find that out, and then I can get that number to you. And I can also give you basically where we left off versus where we are. So
thank you. I think that was, our main goal in asking about that is that, we know that positions in our unit are impacted with these ESSER-funded positions. And, I had just like the conversation we had last week. I do think that for employees in our unit specifically, there are a lot of people who may not really believe that the budget picture is as dire as it is until they start to see some of the cuts affecting this level here. So I think that kind of drives home some of because right now, people are still feeling a lot that there are a lot of positions that have been created at the district level over the last several years. I mean, we talked about that in one of our sessions back in January, and we understand and we appreciate that through this process, I think there has been an intent to protect class sizes, to protect the ratios in classrooms, and to make cuts outside of classroom positions. So definitely want to acknowledge that we know that that's been the intent, but in a year where people are, they're hurting financially and less than satisfied with the final numbers of how things turned out, it breeds that kind of, well, what are they doing about that, right? What are they doing about this? So I think it's important to just reflect that back and say, that's what we're hearing, is that people are definitely questioning the number of, administrator type positions and roles that exist at the district level, and whether or not the impacts should be felt first there before we're talking about anything that impacts further people in our unit.
And I think it's also, at the end of the day, we're trying to make the best decision to service the needs of the students, right? And so I think whenever you look at a department, a school, a team, you're always trying to make the best decisions to serve those students or serve what that maybe department does to help the students. So I think that's where the efforts are, you know, at the district level in terms of thinking about that, if that makes sense. But
Just to reiterate, say the same thing over and over with the high schools and even speaking with the other leads, that's the decision making. That's the stuff we're looking at in allocation meetings, is how to look at the work to be done and how we keep our people in a good place to teach kids, because we know that's the forefront, that's where it's at. So all of our conversation and things that we're doing creatively is the same exact conversation. So from whatever, and Alexis spoke well to that, and I know you guys are speaking well to that on a daily basis, but on the admin side, that's where we're heavily at as well, and we're trying to figure out allocations and personnel. We appreciate the work, that's what I'm saying, yeah, and get it, yeah.
So we have 4 things. So one of them is a typical one whenever we have a year where we're going to have a change in the evaluation system. And as any of you sitting here, because some of you sitting here helped in that, it's about the certified school counselors this year because of what came down from the state. So we recently had an EMART meeting where there was a decision to move forward with that new rubric for certified school counselors that there was a committee for, people looked at, people vetted, people looked at after that. So I have just that MOU for you to sign for for basically saying that we're going to accept those changes with the certified school counselor rubric being added, and that will be the change for into the 26-27 school year. The second one is one you've signed before. It is for the Title I school-based compliance liaison and the Title I school-based family engagement liaison, both of which have a supplement of $1,500. So we're continuing that for the 26-27 school year because of the Title I supplements that exist to pay for that. This is a new one. It's coming from the neglected and delinquent category under the Title I grant. And basically, there's several things in it, but the one thing that will impact your members are people that work at either Endeavor Discovery and or eSchool and are familiar with the Ingenuity platform. They can get a bonus to be involved in helping kids that have been expelled, and they're going to be monitoring. So think of it kind of like, usually it's kind of an eSchool function when a kid's at home and they're doing that part of kind of monitoring and checking on them. If they monitor them, get them through the Ingenuity course, they're going to get a $50 per student for anyone who finishes. And so that's, again, a Title I grant. And so we just want your signature to...
Is that just an MOU for like a certain amount of time, just because we just 1 year?
Yeah.
How is that currently being done?
It's not.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's a new thing where that partly it was, my understanding is that since Mr. Drospers has started there were some new talks and new ideas about how we could accomplish certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how this idea came out, and it was written into a Title I grant.
so currently, if a student is expelled, do we generate any FTE for them?
I don't know the exact answer to that question.
I mean, will we generate FTE as part of this if they're actually,
But if they're sitting at home while we're waiting for them, for the decision to be made or not made, are we generating FTE?
I would definitely have to ask on that, but we do.
We'll get back to you.
Hospital homebound, so I would think.
Well, and sometimes if we have an ESE student that's expelled, they're only expelled for 45 and they still receive services. So I really hope we're still receiving FT money for that. I mean, I know we need to check on that, but we should. I mean, yeah, because we still provide services for those ESE students. Yeah.
So this is while a student is pending expulsion? I guess that's the part I missed.
That's what, yes, that's my understanding.
Okay.
But what she's saying is when they're pending expulsion or once they're officially expelled?
Pending, it's on, yeah. Students who, oh no, it says who are expelled
Yeah.
but continue to receive educational services.
So I think it's both, then maybe. But I can clarify that with Megan.
Okay.
Well, I think that's why it's called the re-engagement, because they were expelled, but now this is something that's going to get them to cross that threshold. And then if we do, there'll be a supplement. But if they're receiving services through Ingenuity, I would assume we can get more clarification from Megan.
Yeah, it would be great to know what the successfully completes coursework means.
Well, and it says student course completion, so they would have to complete the course. Similar to our completers when they get a bonus through eSchool. I think they already get those.
Yeah,
They're
and we can also
completers.
there's a new category called expulsion with services that allows us to capture the FTE.
Okay. My question about that relates to knowing more than I ever wanted to know about how Edgenuity operates over the last few years. Looking into a little bit more about how Edgenuity can be done, can be used, because some of those caveats of the program, I mean, are we doing the credit recovery model, or are we doing the full course? Because there's a big difference there. The credit recovery modules operate on a pre-test basis, and if I pre-test out of everything, that's part of the reason why my understanding, some schools moved away from using Edgenuity as the majority credit recovery system, because it was allowing for too many loopholes, I guess is the best way I can describe it, as far as what course completion really means, what an education really means, honestly, what your content area knowledge could even be if you're doing it on a credit recovery basis. So I think that's my other question about it. Not that we want to stand in the way of people earning for helping people complete, but I definitely think that as, you know, we're considering educational value of things, we also have to be considering, you know, we don't want to encourage expulsion. We don't want to encourage behaviors that result in expulsion. If somebody starts to think that some kind of shortcut path is the way to go, we wouldn't want that.
So I did get the first answer, which is it's for both. It is both pending and for those that are expelled.
Okay.
And the last and fourth one, for those that, oh,
Sorry, I'm still on this one.
okay, go ahead.
The other questions I have is, this is considered extra duty, correct? The
Thank
$50
you.
would be considered extra duty?
It's not additional duty as an extension of their day. It's almost like the same completer rate that they get when they already do part-time eSchool, if that makes any sense. There's already a set rate for that.
Right, but if I'm a full-time,
Yep.
I have a full-time position and I work at Endeavor or Discovery, these students, I'm not working with them during the day, am I?
No.
That's not the intent, to divert away from what we do
No,
during the day.
no, it's not the intent.
Similar, I mean, I
Yes.
know eSchool, you know, they manage their student load the way that,
Just like other
Basic
parts,
fit,
like we
right.
have regular teachers throughout the district that also do part-time eSchool, and it's not during their contracted hours, if that's what you mean, yes.
okay,
I also got clarification, it is the full courses. And the exception to that would be those that took the course once already would have the credit recovery option. And there'd be room for discussion about that anyways.
So, but presumably if I, as a ninth grader, I'm up for expulsion, it's my current schedule, right? English 1, Algebra 1, my current course schedule that I would now be taking as
Full courses.
Edgenuity.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So we just need clarification on FTE, I guess, right? Is that the only other question? Like, do we get FTE money for the kids who are expelled?
Yeah, specifically for the ones who have been expelled, if we generate FTE for those. I mean, while they're pending, they're still enrolled as our students.
Yep. I would assume if they're doing things that we, even as expelled students, we'd still generate FTE.
Well, if, like you mentioned, there's a
Because there's the new
slightly different
category of FTE
designation.
or expelled with services or whatever.
Expelled with
I said.
services. Okay.
No, it's wrong.
And this is specifically for the 2026-27 school year, so we're trying it out in
Correct.
that school year?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, and I've got double confirmation it's full course.
Okay. So what kinds of things are the expectation? Am I just facilitating by phone like an e-school teacher does?
Yeah,
Or am I going to be required to meet up with the student and?
You're tracking them.
Okay.
It's basically helping that student get across the threshold. Because keep in mind, Ingenuity courses have a teacher. So you're kind of a support system to make sure that person finishes.
Edgenuity students. So where are they enrolled then? Because I thought we were saying that these teachers would be the facilitators of they're the teacher of record for the courses.
No, they're already receiving services. This is to ensure their progression and their completing of assignments.
Okay, so like coaching them through trying to motivate. them
Probably
to-
almost similar to like when you do the DBAs, kind of, but it's just them checking in and making sure that they are actually progressing through the course.
Okay. So somebody else is the teacher of record, assigning grades and doing all of that. These people are just facilitating completion.
Because that's built
Okay.
into that platform.
Okay.
I know nothing about engineers in the elementary world.
So the fourth one, okay. I didn't pass out the, yeah, okay. This is the class split. We're going ahead and start right with the 50,000 because we did 50,000 for this year. As Lisa may know, we're up to like 35, I think, the last time I checked, 34. Yeah. So that seems to be a good
You
number.
looked at my message from 2 weeks ago today, is what you're saying? Because that's when you shared it with
I would
me.
like to go on the record to say that whoever's watching, that I looked at that message when it came out. I just re-looked at it tonight.
But we definitely appreciate the update
Yes.
because I didn't have to ask for that this time. It came.
Wasn't that exciting?
On camera.
I think the only thing that I'm a little concerned about is, we've hit the point at this point in the year where it is known at some campuses that sub-funds are dwindling or gone. And so I think by this point in the year, if there's only $15,000 left, or probably less now because that was 2 weeks ago, but if there's $12,000 left district-wide, I don't know how quickly are we burning through this? And is that going to go to a majority, where now it's I can't have teachers order subs because we're out of sub funds, so everything is going to be a split. And when everything is a split, are we really following this, is my question.
I have not heard that. If we do, we would address it. Have you heard that specifically from anyone where they're now splitting instead of getting a sub? Okay, so we could talk about that.
Okay.
But they'd still get this, so we'll also see the remainder of the year if we jump from 34 to more.
Okay.
Right.
So I guess that was my question, is because I know when we signed this, we signed on a cap, right? We don't sign that for sub coverage. There is, I mean, I understand we all have 10 days. I understand there's a certain amount budgeted per school, but I just want to make sure that every school that's coordinated things like, you know, additional planning blocks, like that comes from somewhere else. And it's not draining from the sub funds that are supposed to be used to cover teacher absences.
Right.
Because in that instance, if it's not covered by some other funding source, then people are being shorted the ability to take up to their 10 days paid.
We're actually, you got a really good point with what you're saying. Just to go along with the sub budgets, we've been looking at that closely this year as far as what subs are being used for and kind of tracking some of the commonalities for that. And we're also looking at how our matrix is working for how we distribute the sub budgets. So we got to look at the trend and see if things are being putting in the wrong district costs versus school costs and those kinds of things. So we're looking at that too. So it's not like we're just letting it go through. However, it's submitted from the school regardless. So we are looking at those different things with these union things as well. So
Okay. So, I mean, we're happy to renew it because we know it's needed. I just thought that those other things are kind of influencing, you know, I'm a little bit nervous about whether 50,000 is going to hold us, but until we get to the end of this year, we won't know.
I think the other thing is, we also, this number comes from something the previous year, right? Because I think one of the reasons we came up with this number was that's what we had used the previous year. And theoretically.
This year.
Because it used to be 250.
Yeah.
Oh, you're saying what we actually use?
Yeah.
I think we were
Okay.
at like 46-ish
Yeah.
the year before, which is where the 50 came from.
And unfortunately, there's a world in which we're looking at if we have less vacancies to cover.
Well, and that's where we may have to pivot, because if there's less vacancies, then the district cost is actually going down. But because those vacancies are filled, the school costs may be going up. And that's just something that Joyce and I will have to get back and forth on. So we'll definitely have to keep a close eye on it.
Okay. Good point.
I think something else that's brought up a lot that I hear about substitutes over the last couple of years, especially this year as well, is maybe you were saying that our fill rate, our success rate of getting substitutes is very high in the 90s, which obviously is going to affect that sub budget quicker, I guess it would be, than it would be if there was no one and now you had to figure it out within for a period or two, and that money's going to get hit harder because of the success rate of getting substitutes. And, speaking for which at my school, but I think a lot of schools where you have to figure it out, most of those times right now, or even though I'm kind of said success rate's high, would be a day where a substitute doesn't pick it up. Maybe it's a last second entry. It's a 6:50. Hey, someone just called in and we're not getting somebody. But for the most part, we're on those calls around 5:30 in the morning, just like we are at every school, figuring it out. And it's a good success rate. I think that's why you're seeing that high amount.
Are you guys finding as principals, especially in like high school and secondary, I guess in general, because this wouldn't pertain to elementary, that if someone does call out, that you're able to get teachers to cover it during their planning and they're getting that hourly wage, which does not come out of this budget because they're not being split? Are you guys still using that first?
Yeah, I think for the most part, in the schools that I've been in across the years and the one I'm in now, you usually have those employees are like, hey, if you need somebody first period, I'm your guy. Like, I'm your lady, third period, let me know. That are always looking for that extra dollar. So I think that we do use that often. And then often, you got within each particular department, people are just send them to me because instruction is going to continue. We're going over an important topic today. I can take 15, you take 15. That way everybody's hearing section 7.2 live, as opposed to, sometimes substitutes do the best, but in front of a live instructor, there's no substitute for that. No pun intended. Yeah.
So in those instances, though, where people volunteer to take the split, are they being paid under this?
They're being paid. I wouldn't want to 100% say where exactly the fund's coming from. I'd have to check that, but I know they're being paid because I
The split?
sign it on a
That's where
weekly
it should
basis.
come
Yeah.
from.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
But if they're, what I was asking, sorry, if I probably should have worded this better, is we have a line in the contract that says if they're willing to cover during their planning. That's what I was asking.
And
So if
they're
just
covering the
taking
whole
kids-
class.
Right, they're covering the
Yes,
whole
that's a
class, because then
separate-
that should not be paid under this.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. I don't
Yes.
think it is because I think that's more like if you're.
It's the TPO.
Big thing about putting this in was because, not saying this is just for elementary, but there was no way to pay elementary, and after splitting kids 47 times in the 2021-2022 school year, I'm still waiting for that check, y'all. I was like, we got to talk about this because it was brutal. It was brutal, especially like right after COVID when we really couldn't find subs.
All right, can we just take a few minutes to,
Absolutely.
we'll,
I did reserve the Ken Austin room for you, but
okay.
you're welcome to stay here too, since there's no one here, but you're welcome to go there.
Oh, we'll, yeah, we'll go over there. Thank you.
Okay. So we're back. You guys had some questions about the re-engagement educator one.
Yes, so the question I had was just because I feel like I know it will come up, is how do you select who gets the students?
So one more time?
How do you select which teachers, because you're going to have multiple teachers at these schools wanting these students. So is there going to be a process in which if it's a student, I don't know, I don't know how Ingenuity works, so, because obviously it's just 50.
I think there's in the MOU a prerequisite of the experience and something else required for it. I would assume, and I'm just speaking from like past practice, if it, like we do almost with summer additional duty, something goes out, people sign up, if they have too many, their exact triage process, I don't know that they have that, so I could get you an answer on that, but.
Yeah, and then I guess the other question too is I just thought about this, so sorry. Usually when we do e-school, it's a kid has an English teacher because they might only be taking English, and that teacher gets, what, $75 upon completion or whatever the e-school is. Is there a completion payout for each subject this kid is doing? Each course? Or is it, and then is the same person going to get all 6 of those courses or 4 of those courses? I do think that's probably something that has to be clarified because I feel like that's a question we're going to get because this is going in, our contract, and I want to be able to answer that and clearly, and they're, just because I feel like someone could be like, well, why does that person have 4 kids at 6 courses a pop, and I have 1 kid at 6 courses,
I'm pretty sure this doesn't start until the new school year, so we do have time. We can definitely bring back the questions. We can even have someone come in if we need to that can kind of speak to it.
Yeah, because we don't want to be, we're not against giving people the money for it. We just want to make sure it's equal across the board because we know that those are going to be the questions that you guys get and then we're going to get.
And it's something that each school works through when, I don't know if there's much of it as there used to be, but there used to be tutoring for certain kids, and we have to work through the same kind of things. So we will.
Just from a funding standpoint, a question, how is this a use of Title I funding when we don't have any Title I eligible high schools?
Remember, they also serve middle school. Middle school
Okay.
students go to Discovery and Endeavor.
Okay, so,
And even elementary do too, for that matter.
yes,
Yep.
definitely in Discovery.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. So is this only for like middle school and younger students and not the high schools?
No, it says everyone who's expelled. students who were expelled.
So are we just going to hold on to this one? Okay.
We have time this way, but you can.
I guess we are.
Were you getting us to sign that?
Well, I mean, I don't know. It may just be, whatever clarifying answers we get. We don't want that to be left to our recollection of what was on here. We might need to add some of that language in.
So my thought was, I know that the high schools are on the federal Title I rolls, because I had to go through that process for my student loan forgiveness, make sure that Central was one of those schools, even though they don't receive funding. I don't know if that's a state level thing that the high schools don't receive Title I funding, but the high schools can be Title I eligible. So I don't know if that plays into this in some way, or because of how our funding is.
That's a good point, because I think somewhat this is that we designate the schools based on the highest need, whereas I think almost, it's the same reason we were able to qualify for the free lunch, right? Because of, yeah. Yeah. So that's a great question and good point. One remaining item for us to discuss tonight is our next meeting is set for May 11th. However, as we discussed tonight already, some of the budgetary issues from the state will not be clarified by then. I would like to propose that we cancel that meeting for the whole teams to meet and use it just like a committee meeting, as we've been talking about, just to do the little contract cleanup that we had discussed.
I think we're open to that. The other question about the contract parts that we want to address is, one of the sections that really needs to, the updating is the mentoring appendix. We updated the compensation, which, has been in effect now, but the procedures and things in there are definitely outdated. So hopefully that will be part of what we can look at in that cleanup process.
How many people are you thinking you will bring to fulfill that committee, out of curiosity?
I mean, I was thinking about scheduling 3 or 4 just on the off chance that only 3 of us can be,
Yep.
when we do the scheduling of them, my goal would be to have at least 3 of us.
Okay. I will seek to do the same then.
Okay.
Is there any other business tonight?
I don't think so. I mean, no, not for the,
If, I assume that I'll be one of the committee members. I'm assuming you'll be one of the committee members.
Mhm.
Let's also bring dates for the summer. Maybe we get together with our teams, decide when are
okay.
blackout dates that no one's available, and so on and so forth. Because it may make sense from that meeting to make some meetings closer to the beginning of the school year, if that makes sense. And we
Yeah.
hopefully will have more answers then.
Yeah, I would say we should probably, I mean, I know the budget, whether or not the budget is completed from the state is a big factor in that. I can definitely say that June is more open than July for me,
Okay.
because then it gets like close to when we're back starting again. So, yeah.
Okay. And you have more problems at the beginning of July, right? And I may have more problems at the end of July, so we'll talk.
Yeah, end of July. You're a little busy. Yep.
Should we put on record what we signed?
Hmm?
Should we conclude our meeting with what was signed?
Yeah,
So
that's a
everyone
good
knows.
idea. So
Like, as we conclude
the
Sure.
evaluation manual updates was signed. The specific changes for including the certified school counselor evaluation rubric
for next school year.
to be implemented for next school year. the MOU pertaining to the work for Title I supplements, family engagement, and I'm looking for the other role, compliance liaison. And the extension of split pay into next school year. So when there are requests to split classes, that there will be compensation for that up to an amount of $50,000.
Okay. Well,
And then we're bringing back the other one after we have the questions
the
answered.
clarification on, you want a clarification on how people would be assigned, as well as the Title I piece of it?
And whether or not it's $50 per student,
For each course.
right? Because, I mean, we were envisioning secondary, I guess. Maybe it's not, maybe it's a moot point because it's mostly elementary students, I don't know. But if it's $50 per course, because Edgenuity is broken out by courses. And we also had the question about successfully completes coursework, but I think it's connected to that.
Yeah.
So successfully completes coursework in this course as opposed to not, one but not the other. So if it's paid by course, I think that helps answer the successfully completes coursework part.
Yeah, and I'm going to say that it is, but since we have to get other answers anyways, we'll just triple confirm.
And then, who just, it says it's at will and can be removed from the assignments at the discretion of the principal. But I think that's a matter, that's a question about assignment of students who, can anybody apply if they meet these these criteria, or is it a selection process that we have no idea?
Because what if it's a kid from Whining or Weeki Wachee who gets expelled and there's teachers there with experience and ingenuity? And they're like, why not us? Because they're not listed. Just thinking ahead of all the questions.
Okay. Anything else?
So presumably, when the subcommittee meets is when we're going to be trying to set future dates from there. So
Yep.
the date of that is May 11th.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.